pianos didn't always look like this. The English word piano is a shortened form of the Italian pianoforte, derived from gracimbalo col piano e forte, meaning harpsichord with soft and loud. Now, the modern anatomical piano you have sitting in your living room is not always what it looked like. Now, you might be thinking, hey, my piano isn't that big. It looks more like a rectangular prism. The homeless shelter is way over there, pal. Imagine being so poor that you can only afford an upright piano. But no dilly-dallying over such peasantries. We're not here to donate to a charity after all. We're here to discuss the piano's invention. Now, the piano's invention can be credited to Italian harpsichord maker Bartolomeo Cristofori. Now, Mr. Cristofori was quite well acquainted with the knowledge of string instruments, and before you cry that a piano is a keyboard, I'll have to remind you that you major in computer science in the Big 25, so your opinion doesn't quite matter. Now, after gaslighting the entire world into thinking the piano is not a harpsichord from Walmart, Mr. Cristofori's newest instrument initially went unknown, until an Italian writer, Francesco Maffei, wrote avidly in an article in 1711, praising the design and giving a detailed diagram of the mechanism. Now, reading this article, piano builders flocked their way into starting their work like Mark Rober going into Home Depot, and one of these men was Gottfried Silbermann. Now, Silbermann added what is known as the sustain pedal, which by God I pray you realize does the job of sustaining notes. Now, moving on to the 1730s, Silbermann brought in German composer and raging alcoholic Johann Bach, but Bach disapproved of the piano first, saying the high notes were too soft to allow for full dynamic range. Now, he did give an apology like calling Ballinger, retracting the earlier statement.
The only thing I've ever groomed is my 2 Persian cats.
Now, in the late 1700s, there's less criticism and the popularity of the forte piano started to pick back up. In the Viennese school, German keyboard maker Johann Stein and his daughter Nanette Streicher built the first Viennese-style pianos that had leather-covered hammers, wooden frames, and opposite-colored keys. Now, this marked the end of what we consider as forte pianos, the early variations of what would become the modern piano, and the perfect introduction of a humble Wolfgang Mozart. Now, Mozart would reign in the world of music from 1790 to 1860, and in this time period the Industrial Revolution was in full swing. The air quality was great, the children were fed well, and there was a massive output of various resources, some of which were high quality piano wire and bigger iron frames to withstand the tension, at the expense of 50% of the children dying. But that is not important. What do I look like? A fucking me to we movement? No, what is more important is that now we have more powerful sustained sound. And in the age of Mozart, the piano only had just 5 octaves, 61 keys, barely enough to contain the sheer emotion that pianists wanted to display. And so in the 1800s, the piano industry made remarkable improvements and developments, and as demand increased, this turned to mass production. Very quickly, several new additions were added to the new update. In the late 1700s, John Broadwood constructed pianos that were larger, louder, and more robustly constructed, like my ex-girlfriend. Now, these pianos were adored by Joseph Haydn and Ludwig van Beethoven, who loved the range outside of 5 octaves. 6 octaves by 1810 and 7 by 1820. Now, by the 1820s, pianists began competing with trills and arpeggios, and so they began to desire more sensitive piano actions. And so in 1821, French piano maker Pierre Erard did just this. He created a revolutionary new action that made it possible to repeat notes quickly so that Rush E can be fucking played. Now, in the 1830s, Ignace Pleyel provided Frédéric Chopin with his favorite piano, and in 1844, the sostenuto pedal was added for no other purpose than when my dad is sleeping. Now, by about the middle of the 19th century, in the era of Chopin and Liszt, the principle of piano mechanisms had reached a certain level of perfection. Now, the sound had gone from all the way to the Erard piano. Now, the efforts and goals of piano makers now turn almost entirely on improving quality, and one way of doing this was done by Alpheus Babcock. Now, piano strings at this point had become even thicker than Nicki Minaj.
Nicki Minaj is the queen of rap!
And so, to support these strings like they did with BLM, Instead of posting a black square on their Instagram, they now strung strings on a cast iron frame. Now in 1843, Mr. Babcock patented the first full iron frame on grand pianos in America, and while the Europeans naturally tried to resist their colonization, ultimately seemed like friendly fire was not enough, and the composite forged metal frames were of no match. Now just a few years later, in 1853, Ulrike Engelgard Steinweg flew to New York, changed his name to Henry E. Steinway, and founded one of the most prestigious brands known to pianists today. And by the time of World War I, when the Austria-Hungarian was murked by a double pump, the standard piano became the modern 88 keys. Well, did you learn something? Laugh at any point of the video. Please consider subscribing as we're closing in on 10K. And if you like a detailed dive on one of the most infamous battles in history, click right here. Yeah! 10K! Let's get it!